Hi everyone, it's Alphas, Splits, whatever the fuck you want to call me. You can even call me Luke if you want. That's my Discord username. We're going to be doing a stands online combat video, and even though you'd probably expect to see gameplay, we're on the Trello again. Recording on Zoom because I still can't get my software to work, and I'm too lazy to install a new one. Anyway, why are we on the Trello? Because I think the first thing to preface this is A, we're going to go over the moves. B, we're going to go over some bodies. We're going to go over the talents and utilities. And mainly this, we're going to cover what I call the PvP triangle. So in my opinion, there's four main play styles in stands online. Zoning, aggressive, nuker, damage over time. And I call it the triangle and not the square because I think nukes have fallen into a weird place with this update. Anyway, let's talk about those three first. First, aggressive. These are going to be your very standard garage type stands. This is going to be CDR, SP4R mainly, GR, arguably KCR, sticky fingers, etc., etc. I can go down the list, but not worth it. These stands are going to rely on close combat, garage type situations. Usually they'll typically be running Hammond. We'll get into those utilities later. But very, thought I heard something. Very close range, aggressive play styles. Typically they will either only have one projectile and sometimes even none. I know stands that have no range are bad, but that's not necessarily true. They just typically rely on a more bait and punishy play style. Next, there's zoners. Zoners are very solid. They're probably the best as of right now because of the update and the changes that are made. These stands are going to be having a lot of projectiles. The World Requiem, great moveset. Made in Heaven Wreck, possibly, I think if it's more of aggressive player style. The World AUR, and in my opinion, Ball Breaker, which is the best one right now because Infinite Spin is so supportive for how zoning works right now. And lastly, there's your damage over time stands. Stands that can abuse Sizzle and Free Freeze as a combo are going to be very premier stands. PHR, SK, and Echoes, Magician's Red Requiem even. Stands like that, also fairly good at DOT. Some are better than others, and I think it's the most janky of the classes, but it's also some of the most cheese. Now, in my opinion, DOT stands typically struggle against very aggressive play styles, especially because block can negate a lot of the damage over time. But they do very well against zoners. Zoners struggle against damage over time stands because getting up close and personal to them can really just negate their play style. But they do well against aggressive stands because they're able to take advantage of basically having very close to no end-lag moves that make it very hard to punish. And then aggressive stands struggle against zoning stands and do well against damage over time stands. And then nukes just, I don't know. I haven't seen effective nukes as of right now. I can always make an update video if I feel like that triangle has become a square. But as of right now, that's the triangle. Next, there's going to be the utility you'll want to use. If you're using a zoning stand, you can use Hammond if you want to do kind of a mix close range and far range. That's what I typically use because I like to have the overall buffs. But if you want to play solely range, spin and ultimate spin, great combination for this maximum zoning. Damage over time, stands, always going to be running Hammond. Aggressive stands, always going to be running Hammond. I think you're only going to be using Vampire in very, very specific and niche situations. And overall, it's probably a talent they're going to be overlooking 90% of the time. Anyway, let's go over some moves, what's viable, what's not viable. Obviously, I think Zoom Punch and Hammond Overdrive, both very laggy moves that you're not going to want to use. Sendo Overdrive is very fast and has knockback, so it's great for zoning stands if something gets too close. We're just going to skip this because I don't think any of these moves are really good. And then obviously, if you're using Ball Breaker or Tusk, these moves are slightly buffed, so these are great for zoning. Although they're not the best projectiles in the game, Infinite Rotation can definitely make them better. Now, out of these moves, zoning stands are going to be using gun, especially multi-shot gun stands, unless it's above 6 shots, which I think they become a little more defensive and aggressive. So I think stands with like 1 to 4 shots can do really well with zoning on this, especially I think the World AUR does a really good job, and I think the Grateful Dead Requiem does a good job, especially because of how it pairs well with Aging Gas. We'll get to Aging Gas when we cover secondary moves. Block, premier staple move for aggressive playstyle stands. Being able to negate stuff like this, being able to walk through Freak Freeze, it's so convenient, so nice to have, and probably one of the best moves in the game that's so often overlooked. Block can get a little predictable at times, but it's great for stands that just like want to get in and do the damage, you know? Great approaching option. Bearing, very solid damage move. Great for zoning. Healing mode, absolutely useless. Life Punch can be good for zoning if you want to add a confuse effect, but I recommend it more on aggressive stands because you can take advantage of that opportunity to go in for the barrage. Air Suck, not good anymore. Emerald Splash, solid option for damage over time stands, often more reserved for nukes, especially high damaging, very good stands that can take advantage of 3 freeze as well. Fireball, solid damage over time move. Softening mode, pretty useless. Glide, solid for approaching if you're aggressive, but otherwise pretty useless. We're not going to talk about suits because I don't think they're good at anything but running away. Harpoon, staple for zoning stands and aggressive stands. Zoning, because if you hit the harpoon, you can make more distance. Great for aggressive because opposite, you can approach. Probably one of the best moves in the game for having stuff, especially because it's buffed by infinite spin. Also a great move for both those play styles. Encourage, pretty situational. Stand jump, okay. Blinding bubble doesn't have enough stun to be very viable. Icicle, probably tied for harpoon as the best move. It's a little more spammable than harpoon. A little less damage, but I think great for both zoning and aggressive play styles. Road roller, although it's buffed on the World Requiem, it's a little situational. I think it's pretty easy to avoid, so I would often overlook this. Virus Capsule, staple for DOT stands. And Primary Bomb is hard because of how it works. Right now, it fits best on aggressive playstyles, but I think avoiding it as a whole for stuff like that. So if you're going for aggressive playstyles, block, going for damage over time, definitely Fireball or a stun move like Blinding Bubble. Or Virus Capsule. Virus Capsule is probably your best option, especially if you have PHR. And all the projectiles really can be on zoning stands. What's it called? Primary moves have a lot of strong projectiles, especially Harpoon and Icicle. Secondary moves. Aging Gas used to be pretty bad, but I think it's actually pretty good now, especially because the slowdown effect, especially paired with stand like DDR, do a really good job at just keeping your distance. Or just keeping your distance. Great for all situations. I think that's a little bit better for damage over time stands, especially because of the weakening effect, although they can be good on other stuff. Knife Throw, the premier zoning move, low cooldown, little bit of a low damage, great move. Fire Breath, great for damage over time stance. Wall Creation, great for aggressive stands that want to be able to protect themselves in close range situations, especially from flying projectiles. Fire Arc is an okay move, a little bit meant for nuking, but overall can avoid. Acid Spit, good for damage over time. Scrape, great for approaching an aggressive stance, but also running away. And it especially pairs well with Void Ball, especially on BCR. Gun, Scrape, Void Ball, great for keeping distance and approaching if needed. Virus Caps. I'm running out of breath. I'm trying to run through these as fast as possible. Virus Capsule or Virus Gas. Great damage over time move. Just in general, great move. Low and lag, low startup, stuff like that. Hard to punish. Time Movement. This is a new move, and it's really good for both aggressive playstyles and passive playstyles. Being able to move very quickly is just a great option, and especially when you can't really tell the direction that your opponent's going to move in. Would recommend 90% of the time for stands that are definitely playing aggressive. Although if you don't want to have the movement option, Sword Combat, really great option. Having a strong LMB is a very effective way of kind of eliminating A, aggressive stance that don't do a lot of damage, or B, dealing just damage you need to do if you can't get a barrage in. Especially because it has a little bit of range, has a really good solid buffs of 5/5. Some stands even brought that further, like Heaven's Door. Great move. And especially with the new stat rebalance, it's just so much better now. Mudspit, not going to talk about. Bubble Bomb, solid nuke move, not the best. Ground Slam, not as good as it used to be, still pretty solid. Vine Grab, very stereotypical stun move, not the best. Sizzle, most obnoxious DOT move and pairs super well with Free Freeze. Great moves have. Tree, very good for aggressive playstyles. Gun, solid. Future Sight, Lightning, too unreliable. Gravel Pulse, absolutely useless. Nail move, great for zoning, but now that it's probably a little bit better for now aggressive playstyles, and I wouldn't recommend it as much. High Power, also a staple of aggressive playstyles, but I think Uni is also great for both zoning and aggressive playstyles, solely because of the damage. A can provide high damage up close, and B provide light damage at far ranges, which makes it great for that. Void Ball, same thing, very aggressive for approaching, but also can you use as a runaway move, although it's not the best for running away. Eraser Hand, meh, solid aggressive move, but I would prefer a High Barrage. Free Freeze, great for damage over time stands, especially because it can follow up into Sizzle. Nuke move, Gently Weeps, Heavenly, great nuke move. I don't think Self Heals is good now. Reality Overwrite, great for aggressive playstyles, especially because it disables your stand. And we're not going to talk about any of these moves except for Time Erase, great for aggressive playstyles. And you can do follow-ups and tricks if you want to zone. Although I don't think stands want to be using TE for zoning as much because of that bleed effect now. Just my opinion. So what's the absolute best stand for each class? Echoes or Umimare for zoning, in my opinion. Or DOT stands. Umimare is so toxic, especially with that passive where it becomes more and more defensive. For aggressive stands, I want to say Silver Chariot. It now buffs Uni, buffs Sword, stuff like that. And that new passive, Soul Alteration, which allows it when it's being punished to kind of get in the damage it needs to if it can't. The Grateful Dead or the World That You Are, probably the best for zoning. I think the World That You Are probably takes the cake. Although Ball Breaker, actually no, Ball Breaker easily the best. Infinite Spin is such a good move for zoning and stuff like that. But yeah, as long as you follow that triangle, stuff like that, there's really not much to go into. The combat is very simple, stuff like that. Kind of understanding what counters what is really the key. Now, if you really want to get technical, my dog goes go bark, bark, bark when I'm trying to record a video. But yeah, the thing is it's really hard to make a combat analysis video with the update being so early. Although I'm doing my best here, and I'll definitely do a follow-up video once I get more stuff like that. You'll probably see more PvP matches in that video. I just wanted to cover kind of the play styles in this game for this episode and how they pair with talents. That's really what I wanted to cover mainly. And for the next video, we'll probably look more in depth at how you'll use those stands. So until next time, this has been Alpha Style Splits for Luke, signing off.